My husband thought he'd won. He took my home, money, and my reputation. He thought he had left me with nothing, but he was wrong. He left me with a single purpose: to expose the rot at the very core of my family. For 1 year, I gathered their secrets. And on the night of the gala celebrating their legacy, I was ready to burn it all down. Here's how I did it. They didn't just take my home. They handed me a suitcase, a threat of silence, and a secret that smelled like my mother's perfume. By midnight, I was sleeping in my car, the leather cold against my skin. By dawn, I knew exactly whose hands had pushed me out the door and whose hands had done far worse. But to understand how I ended up in that car, with only a key to a storage unit and a fire in my gut, you have to understand the world I came from. My family, the Harrisons, weren't just rich, they were an institution. Someone carved our name onto hospital wings and university libraries. My father, Arthur Harrison, was a titan of industry who could move markets with a single phone call. His philanthropy was the stuff of local legend. We lived in a world of quiet luxury, unspoken rules, and carefully polished facades. I was the dutiful daughter. I organized charity galas, resolved family conflicts, and fulfilled my duties with care. I was the quiet engine that kept the Harrison prestige machine running, and because of that, I was mostly invisible. Then came Richard, my husband. He was charming, ambitious, and utterly brilliant. When he married me, he married into the Harrison orbit, and he played his part as well as I played mine. For 10 years, our life looked like a perfect portrait of success. Then came the windfall. The tech company Richard co-founded was sold in a blockbuster deal. His payout was over $500 million. I remember the night he told me. We were in the kitchen of our sprawling home, a wedding gift from my parents. He opened a bottle of wine that cost more than my first car. He was electric, buzzing with the news. "We did it, darling," he said, his eyes gleaming. "We never have to worry about anything ever again." I was so proud of him, of us. I thought this was our shared victory. I was such a fool. The very next morning, the coffee shop declined my credit card. A bank alert showed someone had drained our joint accounts. They transferred the money to an account in their name. When I drove home, my gate code didn't work. A security guard I had never seen before told me I wasn't allowed on the property. Through the iron bars, I could see a locksmith changing the locks on my front door. Richard's high-priced lawyer sent me an email. They attached the separation papers, and something else. A post-nuptial agreement from 2 years ago gave up my rights to any assets from our marriage. It said that if we separated, I'd get a one-time payment of $50,000. And there, at the bottom, was my signature. Or, it looked like mine, but it felt like a ghost. I had no memory of signing it. None. Within hours, the whispers started. Friends, even my cousins, stopped answering my calls. Then came the curated leaks to society blogs. I was unstable, erratic, prone to hysterics. Richard, of course, was the long-suffering husband, forced to take drastic action to protect himself and his new fortune. My family's response? Deafening silence. When I finally got my father on the phone, he was cold. "This is between you and Richard," he said. "We can't get involved. You need to be reasonable." My aunt was worse. She told me to take the 50 grand and start fresh, as if 10 years of my life could be bought for the price of a mid-range sedan. They thought they were exiling me. They thought that by taking my home, my money, and my reputation, they'd break me. But as I sat in that car, with reality crashing down, I felt something else underneath the panic. A cold, hard clarity. They hadn't broken me. They'd just set me free. For the first time, I was outside their gilded cage, and I could finally see the rust on the bars. That night, I drove to a 24-hour storage facility and paid for a unit with the last of my cash. As I packed my things, my hand touched a small leather box from my mother. She had passed away 5 years ago. Inside, I found the first breadcrumb. I saw a copy of an addendum to her charitable trust. I had never seen it before. It mentioned a small, recurring payment to someone named Eleanor Vance, a name I didn't recognize. The next day, I used a library computer to look up my mother's probate file. And there it was, a codicil to her will, filed just weeks before she died from a sudden illness. The witnesses who signed it? One was my father's accountant, a man I knew had been in trouble for creative bookkeeping. My mind started racing. I remembered my father shredding documents late one night, right after the funeral. A tiny scrap of paper had escaped the shredder, and I remembered seeing 3 words on it: guardian ad litem, a legal term for a guardian who represents a minor in court. Then the most chilling memory. Months ago, I'd found an old answering machine with a microcassette still inside. The label in my mom's handwriting said, "June 14, don't erase." I'd tossed it in a box of mementos, figuring I'd play it someday. That someday had come. My husband had left me for dead, and my family had slammed the door behind me. They had no idea they'd just given me the one thing I never had in their world, a mission. For the next year, I would live in the shadows, fueled by stale coffee and a burning need for the truth. The year that followed was the hardest of my life. I got a small apartment across town and a job as a paralegal. My old, unfinished law degree finally came in handy. By day, I was learning the ins and outs of evidence. By night, I was running my covert investigation into my husband and my father. First, I went after the post-nup. I was sure it was a fake. I hired a forensic document examiner with my first 2 paychecks. He confirmed it in a week. The notary stamp was a forgery. Even better, the notary posted pictures from a Caribbean cruise. This was during the same week the document was supposedly signed at our home. He couldn't have been there. Next, the microcassette. I found a player in a dusty pawn shop. In the quiet of my apartment, I pressed play, first hissing, then her voice, my mother S., but it was strained and panicked. She was arguing with a man, my father. "You can't keep doing this, Arthur," she pleaded. "She deserves to know she's not a mistake." "She is a threat," my father's voice boomed. "A threat to this family. We made an arrangement. The arrangement is final. You will not contact her. It is over." Then my mother's voice, a broken whisper. "She's my daughter." A daughter, Eleanor Vance, the name of the trust. The guardian ad litem. It all clicked. My mother had a child before she met my father. To protect his ambition, he orchestrated a secret adoption, sealed the records, and swore my mother to secrecy. Eleanor was the Harrison family's first and darkest crime. Finding her took months. The trail was deliberately cold. Finally, I found her, a librarian living 2 states away. I wrote her a letter, telling her I thought we were sisters. 2 weeks later, she called. She knew she was adopted, but had been told her birth mother was a young woman who couldn't care for her. While Eleanor and I were tentatively building a connection, the war with Richard was escalating. His lawyers hit me with a restraining order. They leaked texts to tabloids to paint me as a vindictive shrew. My aunt gave an interview about my troubled history. They were trying to bury me. Then a friend of mine, a forensic accountant, found the thread that tied it all together. Days before my father's company, Harrison Medical, hit a report on a faulty device, Richard sold a lot of its stock short. The recall was never made public, but it was serious enough to tank a major merger, causing the stock to dip. Richard made a fortune. How did he get that information? Information only my father would have had. His betrayal of me wasn't just greed. It was directly tied to the corruption my father had been hiding for years. The walls were closing in. My family offered me a bigger payout, but with an ironclad NDA. My aunt casually said, "Conservatorship." She hinted at making me seem mentally incompetent. It almost worked. For a few terrifying weeks, it felt like they were winning. Then I listened to my mother's tape again. I heard the break in her voice. Revenge wasn't enough. This was for justice. They saw a decorative wife and a dutiful daughter. They never saw the woman with a spine of steel. The gala celebrating 50 years of their foundation was in 3 weeks. It was supposed to be my father's crowning achievement. I decided it would be the stage for his downfall. If you've ever felt underestimated and believe in the power of truth, hit that like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that stories like this matter. Now, back to how I planned the perfect ruin. Those last 3 weeks were a blur. My plan had 3 fronts: legal, financial, and public. This wasn't going to be a shouting match, it was going to be an execution. First, legal. My new lawyer, a bulldog who loves a good fight, filed to have the forged postnup thrown out. Eleanor and I also asked the court to unseal her birth records. We used the tape transcript and the changed codicil to show evidence of fraud. Second, financial. My accountant friend and I created a big whistleblower report for the SEC. It covers Richard's insider trading. We laid it all out, clear as day. I hit send 72 hours before the gala. Finally, the gala itself. I couldn't show up and scream. They'd call me hysterical. I sent an anonymous tip to some well-known journalists. I told them a big story about the Harrison family that would break at the gala. I also gave them a password-protected link that would go live at 9 p.m. sharp. The night of the gala, I walked into that museum, into a room dripping with crystals and filled with the city's elite. I wore a simple black gown. I wasn't there to blend in, I was there to bear witness. A hush fell as I walked in. I could feel their eyes, hear the whispers. I ignored them, my gaze fixed on my father holding court and Richard at his side looking smug. He caught my eye and gave me a small, pitying smile. He had no idea he was a dead man walking. The speeches started. My father finally took the stage, talking about legacy, character, and values. As he was winding down, I saw a journalist in the corner open a laptop. It was 9:00 p.m. I made the files live. Inside that folder was everything. The tape transcript, the forgery report, the evidence of Richard's trade, a recorded deposition from my sister Alina. She shares her story in calm, powerful words. Our family's name, my father said, his voice thick with emotion, is our most sacred trust. At that exact moment, phones all over the room started chiming with news alerts. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People looked at their screens, then up at my father, their faces shifting from adoration to shock. Richard pulled out his phone, his face draining of all color. His eyes darted around, finally landing on me. The pity was gone. Now it was pure panic. I didn't say a word. I held his gaze. I gave him a small, calm nod. And in that moment, he knew. He knew he hadn't beaten anyone. They had dismantled his strategies one by one. The fallout was immediate. The gala ended in a mass exodus. Disgrace forced my father to step down. The SEC launched a formal investigation into Richard and froze his assets. His world, built on money, was gone. A few weeks later, a judge ruled our postnup either null or void. He called it a brazen act of fraud. Then, he sent the forgery to the district attorney for a criminal investigation. I watched the mask of charming confidence finally shatter from Richard's face. It was over. It's been a year. My divorce is final, and the settlement was, let's say, a lot more than $50,000. Richard is drowning in legal battles. My father is a recluse. I see my sister, Alina, every month. We're still finding our footing, but it's real. We're starting a new foundation in our mother's name. It will help people uncover hidden truths. I didn't get my old life back, but I never wanted it. I lost the illusions that kept me captive. I learned that in their world, love was a transaction. I learned their language with ease. I balanced the ledger with interest and left the debt in their name. Thank you for listening. The silence around family secrets is what gives them power. If you found the courage to speak your truth, I would be honored if you shared a piece of your journey in the comments. Subscribe for more stories about justice and resilience. You are not alone.